Let's talk a little bit about how to handle keyboard events in your programs. So if you're working on the Hangman program, you want to be able to handle when the user types a letter so that you can either show that letter in the puzzle or start to draw your figure on the gallows if that letter's not in the puzzle. And so we need to talk about how do we do that in a tkinter program. And so what we've got here is just a short little bit of code for setup, and then I'm going to do an example of a way to handle keyboard events, and you'll have to modify it for your use to do things a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to show you, but this will get you started. So you can see here I've imported tkinter. I've also created a couple variables, one for legal characters. These are the things that the user is allowed to type. We want to ignore things that aren't in this list. And then we've also got the secret phrase, right, the puzzle. Do or do not, there is no try. And then beneath that, you see we've got some of the things that we talked about earlier about a main window. We've titled it, and we've created a canvas. Then we've started our main loop. Well, what we want to do now is to be able to handle keyboard events, we need to write a function to do that. And that's called a handler function, an event handler function. And so we're going to do that right now. So we'll say def, and I'm going to call this handle key press. It's a good idea to name your event handlers handle underscore something so that it's clear to the people reading your code that this handles an event. Every event handler takes a parameter, and we're going to call it event. Okay, this is important. It doesn't have to be called event, but it needs a parameter because tkinter will expect that to be there. Okay, so here's our function. And what we want to do is we want to check, did the key that they pressed, is that a legal character, right? And so in order to do that, we're going to write an if conditional, and we'll say event.care. Okay, now this is not made up by me. This has to be what it is. Now you can name event something else, but whatever you name it, it's that thing .care. That's being passed into the event variable as the character that was pressed. And so that's important. And we're going to say if the character's in the legal characters, then we want to process that. We want to say, okay, well, was that letter in the puzzle or wasn't it? And just as an example, again, you're going to have to modify this for your own purposes, but I'm going to check to see if this letter that was just pressed is in the puzzle. And if it is, I'm going to print it out on the screen in the right position. And so in order to do that, I'm going to say, I'm going to do a loop. And I'm going to go through each character in my secret phrase and see if this character that they pressed matches it. Right? So in order to do that, I'll say for I in the range of the length of my secret phrase. And so in this way, I will loop through every character in the secret phrase. And I'm going to check to see, is the event.care, the key that the user typed, if that equals the current character in my secret phrase, right? So secret phrase sub I. Okay? If that's equal, well then I want to fill in the blank, right, in my Hangman puzzle. I want to fill in the blank. Now, I haven't talked about how to draw the blanks. You can be able to figure that out yourself with the create line. But, we want to be able to fill in the character in the right spot. So how do we do that? Well, that character is going to be in a different spot depending on where it is in the puzzle. So the way we write characters on a canvas is to use the create text method, create text function. And so we give it an x coordinate and a y coordinate and then the text. Okay. Now, in my case, the x coordinate is going to be dependent upon what I is. Which character did it match up with? So I'm going to just write a quick expression. This is not the expression you're going to want to use. You want to probably change it based on what you do. But I'm going to say 15 plus I times 8. And so what I'm saying here is, if it was on the first character and I is 0, I'm going to make my x coordinate 15 and bring it in from the edge a little bit. If it's on the 5th character, well, then I will be 4, and 4 times 8 is 32. 32 plus 15, is 47, and it'll be in position 47. My y, I'm just going to set that to just 40 or 30, so make it 40. It doesn't really matter. At this point, you'll want to make that whatever you want it to be. Now, the text I want is the character that the user just typed. And so the way we do that is we actually write the word text, and we set it equal to the thing we want to print out. Right? So if I wanted to print out hello, this would print out hello at this XY position. But I don't want to print out hello. I want to print out the thing that was just typed, which is event.care. And so now what this function will do is every time the user types something, if it's a legal character and it's in the puzzle, it will print out that character at a position that is appropriate, right? But as I look at this function, I've got this handle key press function, and I don't call it anywhere. So I need a way to connect this function to the act of the user pressing a key. And that's really important. And the way that we do that is with what's called the bind function. And so I want to bind the key press event to the canvas. So when the user is working in my game, those key events get sent to my canvas, and then this method gets called. And so back in the main part of my program, after my pack here, I'm going to say c.bind. And the way that we specify that I want to bind key events is we put a string here with angle brackets, capital key. This is important. This is tkinter's way of identifying keyboard presses. And so we're binding key presses to the canvas. That's how we're reading this. Binding key presses to the canvas. Comma, what do we want to do when a key is pressed? Oh, we want to call our function. And so the next thing we do is we list a second argument that's the name of our function. Notice I'm not including any parentheses or the event, just the name. So I'm binding this function to this event to the canvas. One last thing we have to do is we have to give the canvas focus. By default, the canvas won't receive key events of any kind. And so what we have to do is set the canvas to be the thing that has focus. And so we say focus set. And again, that's a tkinter function. And this will make it so that the canvas receives these key events. And once it receives a key event, that key event is bound to the function we defined, and it should run. And so when we save this and run it, let's see what happens. Oops, I made a mistake here. Classic error. Double equal sign for comparison. Okay, we've got my hangman window. If I start to type in here now, I can type, for instance, an O. Oh, and it printed out all the O's. I'll type a D. Do, or, R, N, T, I, S, H, E, Y. Okay, so I type all these letters in. Do or do not, there is no try. Notice that first D didn't show up. I wonder why. That's something you're going to have to handle. If you look at the secret phrase, you might be able to tell why the first D didn't show up, and you're going to have to handle that in your own code. Notice we also don't have a comma. If I try to type a comma, I'm hitting a comma right now, or a period right now. Nothing's happening. Why not? You need to think about that as well. Some of these punctuations you probably want to show in your Hangman program before you even start to let them type. So keep that in mind, and again, you'll have to modify this to do what you need it to do. Okay, if you have questions about that, let me know, but this is a way that you can start to implement your own handling of key presses and other events.